Hey, third grade. Addie and I are here. We are going to read aloud one chapter from the Tale of Despereaux today, and I'm going to be reading a chapter every day. And we started this in class weeks ago, so it's been a while. So before we get started, we're going to do a recap and just give you a quick summary of what happened so far in the story. So the Tale of Despereaux is the book that we're reading today. It is by Kate DiCamillo, and I'm a follower of hers on Facebook, and she and her company that she writes for, called Candlewick Press, have given permission for teachers to read her books aloud, so we have permission. All right, so we'll start from the beginning. Our main character is Despereaux, and he's a mouse. And what do we know about Despereaux?
Well, he's extremely different from the other rats, and his family complains that his ears are too big and he's extremely small.
He's tiny, he's a small mouse, and he just doesn't fit in. He doesn't conform. He's not like the rest of the mice. Instead of eating the pages from the book, he wants to read them. So he's very different. So I made a quick drawing here for you. The setting is a castle. So upstairs we have Despereaux, and he meets a princess named P, and she has a dad who's the king, and he meets them while the dad is playing some music one day, and he goes out and shows himself to them and talks to them, and this is a big no-no. The rest of the mice are not happy about this. His brother catches him. His brother's name is Furlough, and Furlough goes back and tells on him. Now, his parents, Despereaux's parents, are also characters from the book. His mom is not very motherly.
She's really selfish.
She's pretty selfish. All she cares about is how she looks and stuff like that. And then his dad, he just seems kind of more just like a normal parent. So there's our characters from the upstairs. Downstairs in the dungeon, we have a couple characters that we meet. We have the jailer, whose name is Gregory, and he lives in the dungeon, and it's dark in the dungeon. There's no light. And then we also meet a couple of other mice in the dungeon. We meet Roscuro, who longs to go into the light. He wants light, and we talked about in the class. I actually was only reading this to Miss Tipton's class, so if you're in my homeroom and you're joining us, that's why we're giving you this summary, so you can catch up with us. We meet a rat named Roscuro, and we think he's trying to be good. He wants to be a good rat, but he is faced with another rat named Botticelli, and Botticelli wants Roscuro to be evil. He wants him to taunt and be mean to the prisoners that come into the dungeon. So we actually meet a new prisoner that comes into the dungeon. We don't know his name yet. All we know about him is that he is there because he stole some cows or something. But he also admits to Roscuro that, what, Addie?
That he traded his daughter, I think, for a pack of cigarettes and a red tablecloth.
And so Roscuro tries to befriend him, but then in the end we find out that Roscuro is really just tricking him, and so he ends up stealing the red tablecloth from him, which is one of his prized possessions. So he's really trying to torture him. So that's kind of where we're at right now. When we left off, Despereaux had just been sentenced to the dungeon because he was not conforming to the mice ways, and so they actually his own brother Furlough was one of the guards that walked him down, and they threw him into the dungeon. Okay, and so that's where we left off, and that's where I'm going to pick up on chapter 13. All right, Addie. Thanks for your help.
Thanks.
Okay, so here we go. I will start reading at chapter 13, and this chapter is called Light, Light Everywhere. Imagine, if you will, having spent the whole of your life in a dungeon. Imagine that late one spring day you step out of the dark and into a world of bright windows and polished floors, winking copper pots, shining suits of armor, and tapestries sewn in gold. Imagine. And while you are imagining things, imagine this too. Imagine that at the same time the rat steps from the dungeon and into the castle, a mouse is being born upstairs, A mouse reader who is destined to meet the light bedazzled rat. But that meeting will occur much later, and for now the rat is nothing but happy, delighted, amazed to find himself standing in so much light. "I," said Roscuro, spinning dizzily from one bright thing to the next, "I will never leave. No, never. I will never go back to the dungeon. Why would I? I will never torture another prisoner. It is here that I belong." The rat waltzed happily from room to room until he found himself at the door to the banquet hall. He looked inside and saw gathered there King Philip, Queen Rosemary, the Princess P, 20 noble people, a juggler, 4 minstrels, and all the king's men. This party, reader, was a sight for a rat's eyes. Roscuro had never seen happy people. He had only known the miserable ones. Gregory the jailer and those who were consigned to his domain did not laugh or smile or clink glasses with the person sitting next to them. Roscuro was enchanted. Everything glittered, everything. The gold spoons on the table and the jingle bells on the juggler's cap, the strings on the minstrels' guitars, and the crown on the king and queen's heads. And the little princess, how lovely she was! How much like light itself! Her gown was covered in sequins that winked and glimmered to the rat. And when she laughed, and she laughed often, everything around her seemed to glow brighter. "Oh, really?" said Roscuro. "This is too extraordinary. This is too wonderful. I must tell Botticelli that he was wrong. Suffering is not the answer. Light is the answer." And he made his way into the banquet hall. He lifted his tail off the ground and held it at an angle and marched in time to the music the minstrels were playing on their guitars. The rat, reader, he invited himself to the party. And that's the end of that chapter. We will move on to chapter 20, and I'll read it as well. It's pretty short. There was in the banquet hall a most beautiful and ornate chandelier. The crystals that hung from it caught the light of the candles on the table and the light from the face of the laughing princess. They danced to the rhythm of the minstrel's music, swaying back and forth, twinkling and beckoning. What a better place to view all this glory, all this beauty! There was so much laughing and singing and juggling that no one noticed as Roscuro crawled up a table leg and onto the table, and from there flung himself onto the lowest branch of the chandelier. Hanging by one paw, he swung back and forth, admiring the spectacle below him. The smells of the food, the sound of the music, and the light. Oh, the light! It was amazing, unbelievable. Roscuro smiled and shook his head. Unfortunately, a rat can hang from a chandelier for only so long before he is discovered. This would be true even at the loudest party. Reader, do you know who it was that spotted him? You're right. The sharp-eyed Princess P. "A rat!" she shouted. "A rat is hanging from the chandelier!" The party, as I have noted, was loud. The minstrels were humming and strumming and singing. The people were laughing and eating. The man with the jingle cap was juggling and jingling. No one in the midst of all this merriment heard the P. No one except for Roscuro. Rat. He had never before been aware of what an ugly word it was. Rat. In the middle of all that beauty, it immediately became clear that it was an extremely distasteful syllable. Rat. A curse, an insult, a word totally without light. And not until he heard it from the mouth of the princess did Roscuro realize that he did not like being a rat, that he did not want to be a rat. This revelation hit Roscuro with such force that it made him lose his grip on the chandelier. The rat, reader, he fell. And alas, he fell right directly into the queen's bowl of soup. Dun, dun, dun. I have a picture here to show you if I can get it in. So there is Roscuro hanging from the chandelier. I hope you can see that. And that's where I'm going to stop for today. Tomorrow we will pick up with chapter 21 called The Queen's Last Words.